The galaxy was vast and full of wonders. Thousands of species had risen and fallen, each leaving behind their own mark on the stars. To the great civilizations, technology was everything. Ships were sleek, polished, and designed to represent both power and elegance. Battles, when they happened, were usually short, decided by energy beams, plasma bolts, and shield harmonics. To most of the galaxy, this was the only way war was fought. Clean, precise, and efficient. That was why the first report of the strange vessel caused more laughter than fear. A scout ship from the Zorath. Union had been patrolling near the neutral zones when their sensors caught an odd silhouette drifting in space. At first, the crew thought it was an asteroid, but the readings did not match. It was too symmetrical, too structured. Then the shape became clear. A massive warship, larger than most known carriers. But instead of sleek curves and glowing shield projectors, the vessel looked crude. Its armor was layered, thick, and uneven. Huge blocks of metal plates covered its frame, as if someone had bolted them on without care for appearance. The engines glowed dimly, pushing the ship at a steady but slow pace. It looked like something out of the galaxy's ancient past, before energy shields and plasma drives. The Zorath captain recorded the sighting and laughed with his crew. "Look at this relic," one of the officers said. "Who would build something so ugly?" "Primitive," the captain agreed. "A supercarrier, perhaps, but from some backward race that knows nothing of proper design." They sent the data to the Union's central archives. Soon other empires were talking about it. The Varn Collective called it a floating scrapyard. The Tyrell Dominion joked that it must have been built by a pre-warp species who accidentally strapped engines to a station. Across the galaxy, the strange ship became a subject of amusement. Yet behind the laughter, there was also curiosity. The vessel, now given the mocking name the Primitive Supercarrier, was traveling through neutral space with no escort. It gave off no distress signals, no calls for help, and no requests for contact. It simply moved forward, steady and silent, like a giant beast ignoring the smaller creatures around it. The Galactic Observation Council soon sent its own scouts to investigate. The council was made up of representatives from many major civilizations, all dedicated to keeping balance and preventing unnecessary wars. They had seen thousands of ships in their time, but nothing quite like this. When their first close-range scans came back, confusion spread through the council chambers. The hull was made of dense alloys layered in thick slabs. The vessel had multiple engine banks, each working independently. Power cores were scattered throughout the structure, instead of being centralized like most designs. The weapons, if they could be called that, looked outdated. They were long tubes of metal with electromagnetic coils and what appeared to be explosive warheads. There were also missile pods and strange launch bays. "It makes no sense," one scientist said during the briefing. "These are kinetic weapons, projectiles, nothing like the plasma lances or energy beams we use." "Perhaps it is ceremonial," another suggested. "A ship designed for intimidation, not combat." The laughter returned. To the advanced races, such crude tools were laughable. Why fire chunks of metal when one could simply cut through ships with beams of light? Why layer armor when energy shields could block everything? But not everyone was amused. Admiral Veyron of the Core Imperium leaned forward in his seat. He was older than most of the council members, and his experience made him cautious. "Primitive or not," he said slowly, "the size of this vessel alone makes it dangerous. Its weapons may look outdated, but they are numerous. And the armor? We have never seen such density. It may not be advanced, but it could endure more than we expect." His warning was noted, but soon dismissed. The majority of the council still viewed the ship as little more than a curiosity. Still, they voted to send an investigation team. A coalition of ships from several empires approached the vessel. They expected to find a derelict crew or perhaps a group of desperate scavengers. What they found instead changed everything. As their ships neared, the vessel turned slightly, aligning its massive hull toward them. Suddenly, the sensors lit up. The engines were not weak or failing, they were stable and strong. The strange energy signature that had puzzled the council grew brighter. The vessel was alive, active, and fully powered. The alien crews exchanged nervous glances. "It cannot be. This thing is operational," whispered a Varn technician. The coalition ship sent a hailing signal. There was no reply. They tried again, switching frequencies, offering peaceful greetings. Finally, a signal came back. It was in a language none of them recognized. The Council's translation algorithms went to work. The reply was short, calm, and firm. "This is the human vessel Atlas. State your purpose." The word human spread quickly across the Council channels. Most had never heard of such a species. A few records existed, buried deep in exploration logs. A small species from the spiral arm, known for being slow to develop spaceflight. Nothing suggested they were capable of building something like this. Still, the Coalition pressed forward. They requested permission to board, and after a long silence, the reply came. "Permission granted. You may enter. Weapons will remain secured." The boarding team expected to find a crude interior, perhaps dirty and poorly lit. But when they stepped inside, their assumptions began to crumble. The corridors were wide and reinforced, built not for beauty but for durability. Everything was practical, designed to keep working even under damage. The lighting was simple but efficient. Panels showed strange human text alongside symbols that the translators struggled to decode. And then they met the crew. The humans wore uniforms of plain design, nothing ornate or flashy. Their faces were calm, their movements disciplined. They did not look like scavengers or desperate colonists. They looked like trained professionals. One of the alien envoys spoke through a translator. "This ship, it is not like anything we know. Why is it so large? Why so crude?" The human commander, a tall figure with steady eyes, replied simply, "The Atlas was built to endure. It was built to protect." The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. To them, it still looked primitive. But something about the human's tone carried weight. There was no pride, no arrogance, only certainty. When the envoys asked about the strange weapons, the commander explained, "Our railguns and missile systems may seem old to you, but they serve a purpose. We do not rely on a single system. Every weapon, every engine, every reactor, redundant, layered, and built to last. This ship can keep fighting even when half destroyed. That is how humans survive." The aliens did not understand. To them, such methods were wasteful, unnecessary. Yet a quiet unease began to grow in their hearts. If this was what humans considered a carrier, what else were they capable of? The Coalition ships withdrew to report back to the Council, and for the first time the laughter faded. The primitive Supercarrier was no longer just a joke. Something about it, something about the humans, was different. The galaxy had discovered a new player, and though they did not know it yet, nothing would ever be the same. The Galactic Observation Council had expected a mystery, perhaps even a relic to study. But what they received instead was something far more troubling. Reports of the Atlas spread quickly across the stars. Each message carried the same tone, confusion mixed with a quiet, growing concern. It was no derelict ship. It was alive, operational, and controlled by a species most had never considered important. Humans. The council chambers, usually full of calm debate, buzzed with heated voices. Representatives of the Zorith Union shouted that the humans must be investigated. The Varn Collective argued that the vessel was a bluff, a showpiece without true strength. The Tyrell Dominion wanted to seize it, dismantle it, and learn whatever secrets hid behind its armor. Only Admiral Veyron of the Core Imperium reminded them to be cautious. "Mock it if you wish," the Admiral said gravely. "But you saw the data. No derelict could power engines that strong. No scavenger crew could maintain so many redundant systems. We are not looking at a failed experiment. We are looking at a purpose-built warship." The words settled uncomfortably among the council members. Eventually, a decision was made. A delegation of multiple species would board the Atlas formally. They would meet the humans face to face and learn their intentions. The shuttle ride was silent. Representatives from the Varn, Zorath, Tyrell, and Core sat together, each wearing their traditional diplomatic robes. Only the soft hum of the engines filled the space as they approached the giant silhouette of the Atlas. The Supercarrier loomed larger with every passing moment. Its size dwarfed the shuttle until it seemed less like a ship and more like a moving city. The armor plates reflected starlight in dull gray glints, making it appear as if the vessel had been carved from a mountain. As they neared the docking bay, one of the Zorath whispered nervously, "It looks alive," the Corps Admiral responded calmly. "It looks prepared." The bay doors opened and the delegation entered the heart of the ship. The first impression was unexpected. They had expected chaos, dirt, and crude construction. Instead, everything was orderly. The walls were not polished like alien ships, but they were strong and clean. Lights glowed steadily overhead. Signs and strange human symbols marked each section. Waiting for them stood a small group of humans in uniform. Their clothing was simple, dark fabric with patches showing rank, but their posture was straight and disciplined. One of them stepped forward. He was taller than most of the aliens had expected, with sharp eyes that seemed to weigh every detail. His voice was calm when the translator picked up his words. "Welcome aboard the Atlas. I am Commander Hale. You will be treated with respect here, so long as you respect our rules." The delegation exchanged glances. A Varn diplomat tried to sound confident. "We thank you, Commander. The Galactic Council is curious about your ship. It is unlike anything we have seen. Why is it so large? Why built in this manner?" Hale's expression did not change. Because survival does not come from elegance. It comes from strength and preparation. The aliens waited for him to explain, but he simply gestured for them to follow. The tour of the Atlas left the visitors unsettled. They walked through corridors wide enough to march armies. They saw engine chambers, each separate from the others, so that even if half were destroyed, the ship would keep moving. They passed through armories stacked with strange weapons, railguns, missile racks, and torpedoes. The aliens laughed softly at first. "These are outdated toys," one Tyrell muttered. "Projectiles, explosives, what are they against plasma?" But when Commander Hale overheard, he answered with steady certainty. "Outdated, perhaps. Ineffective, hardly. Energy shields are powerful, yes, but even they must obey physics. Enough mass, enough speed, and even the strongest barrier will collapse. That is why we use kinetic weapons. They strike where your shields are weakest." The aliens grew quiet. The words carried no boast, only fact. Later in the command center, they were surprised again. The bridge was not sleek with glowing panels. It was layered with stations, each crew member handling their role with calm precision. Dozens of displays showed ship status, weapon status, and external views. Nothing looked advanced compared to alien systems, but everything worked. And more importantly, everything was duplicated. There were backups for the backups. One Zorath envoy asked, "Why so many copies of the same systems?" "It seems wasteful," Hale replied. "Because war is not clean. When systems fail, we do not stop. We continue. If one engine is lost, another carries on. If one reactor is destroyed, others remain. This ship was designed to survive the worst, not to impress observers." The delegation could not deny the logic, even if it felt alien to their own ways of thinking. Later, when the group sat down in a conference room aboard the Atlas, the humans finally offered them water and simple food. A Tyrell delegate finally asked the question burning in every mind. "Commander Hale, why did your people build this vessel? What war do you prepare for?" For the first time, Hale's calm expression shifted. His eyes hardened and his tone grew quiet. "Because we do not trust the stars to remain peaceful. Humanity learned long ago that survival belongs to those who prepare for the worst. We built the Atlas not for conquest, but for endurance. It is not the only one of its kind." The room fell silent. Not the only one? The thought chilled the delegation. If there were more ships like this, more carriers designed with the same brutal purpose, then humanity was not just a small species with a single strange ship. They were builders of fleets, fleets designed to last where others would fail. The Varn delegate tried to laugh it off. "Your design is heavy, slow. Against a modern fleet, surely it would not last long." Hale leaned forward. His voice was calm but carried steel. "Do you truly believe that? Or do you only hope it is true?" The words silenced the room again. When the delegation returned to their shuttle, they carried more questions than answers. The Atlas had not threatened them, but it had not needed to. Its presence alone was a message. Humans were not what the galaxy thought they were. On the council channels, reports clashed with each other. Some still mocked the humans, insisting their weapons were outdated and their design foolish. Others argued that no species would build such a ship without reason. And a few began to fear what humanity might reveal next. As the shuttle departed, Admiral Veyron stared through the viewport at the looming carrier. He spoke softly, almost to himself. "Primitive? No, this is not primitive. This is determination given form." The others did not answer, but his words stayed with them. Because deep down, every member of the delegation knew the same truth. The galaxy had laughed at humanity's creation. But now, after walking its corridors, after meeting the humans themselves, laughter was harder to find. The Atlas was not a relic. It was a promise, and promises had a way of being kept. The galaxy was still laughing, though the laughter was weaker than before. Reports of the human vessel Atlas had traveled far, and every race had their own opinion. Some claimed it was a bluff, a symbol meant to scare. Others argued it was dangerous only in appearance, but weak in practice. But among those voices was another, quieter, yet stronger, the voice of fear. The Atlas was moving slowly through neutral space, ignoring the chatter, ignoring the insults. It did not speed up nor slow down. It did not answer the endless questions sent through comms. It only traveled forward, steady as a mountain in motion. The Galactic Council wanted patience. They wanted time to study. But not every empire cared for patience. The Tyrell Dominion was proud and aggressive. To them, honor was everything, and they could not tolerate the idea that an unknown species had built a vessel so large without their approval. In their eyes, the Atlas was not just an ugly warship. It was an insult. So they sent a fleet. The Tyrell fleet was not small. 20 cruisers, 10 frigates, and 2 battleships emerged from slipspace in perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed like polished blades, their plasma cannons glowing in anticipation. Each ship was fast, sharp, and designed for precision strikes. The galaxy watched through relays and observation drones. Everyone expected the same result. The so-called primitive supercarrier would finally be humbled. The Tyrell commander hailed the Atlas. His voice was full of pride. "Human vessel, you drift in our path without permission. Power down and surrender. Show us you have some sense, and perhaps we will allow you to live." The reply was calm, steady, and cold. "This is the human vessel, Atlas. We do not surrender." The Tyrell commander laughed. "Then you will be destroyed." The first strike came swiftly. Blue plasma bolts lit the void, slamming into the Atlas. The watching species leaned forward, expecting explosions, expecting fire. But when the light faded, the supercarrier still moved. Its armor was scorched, dented but intact. The Tyrell fired again, this time with their battleships. The blasts were stronger, enough to vaporize a cruiser. The Atlas shuddered, but it kept going. Its hull absorbed the punishment, layer after layer of armor taking the hits. On the council channels, confusion spread. How is it still intact? Those shots should have torn it apart. It makes no sense. Inside the Atlas, Commander Hale stood calmly on the bridge. His crew reported damage, but none of them panicked. They had trained for this. Every strike had been expected. "Railguns online," Hale ordered. "Missile pods 1 through 6, ready to fire." The Tyrell fleet closed in, confident their next barrage would finish the job. That was when the Atlas struck back. The first railgun volley lit up the dark. Slugs of dense metal, accelerated to incredible speed, tore across space. The Tyrell's energy shields flared as they tried to resist the impacts. But the humans had spoken true. Enough mass, enough speed, and even the strongest shield failed. The first Tyrell cruiser vanished in a burst of fire. The second lost its engines, spinning helplessly. The railguns did not fire elegant beams. They delivered blunt, unstoppable force. Then the missiles launched. Hundreds of them. They streaked across the void, small and fast. Too many for the Tyrell to shoot down. Explosions tore across the formation, ripping through ships that had never faced such weapons before. The Tyrell commander shouted for his fleet to regroup, but panic was spreading. Plasma weapons fired wildly, hitting some missiles but missing most. Another cruiser exploded, then a frigate, then another. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. What shocked them most was not just the destruction, it was how the Atlas fought. Alien fleets were designed like dancers, fast, elegant, relying on perfect timing and fragile balance. But the humans fought like a storm. Their ship absorbed punishment without pause, then answered with overwhelming force. There was no beauty in it, no elegance, only raw survival. On the council channels, some species tried to deny it. It cannot be. Luck, only luck. They must have hacked the Tyrell somehow. But the truth was undeniable. The so-called primitive weapons were tearing through one of the galaxy's proudest fleets. The Tyrell battleships pressed forward, refusing to retreat. They poured their fire into the Atlas, determined to bring it down. But even as armor plates melted and hull sections cracked, the humans kept fighting. Backup engines roared to life. Secondary reactors powered weapons. Damage control crews sealed ruptures with speed born from endless drills. The Atlas was bleeding, but it was still alive. Commander Hale stood steady, watching the tactical screen. His voice carried no fear. "Target their battleships. Full spread." The railguns fired again. A storm of slugs smashed into the lead Tyrell battleship, its shields flaring, failing, then collapsing. The missiles followed, punching deep into its hull. A moment later, the great ship tore apart in a silent explosion of fire and fragments. The second battleship tried to retreat, but the Atlas's missiles found it too. Engines failed, weapons died, and soon the proud ship drifted powerless. The Tyrell fleet was broken. Silence filled the galaxy's channels. No one laughed now. The mighty Tyrell Dominion had sent a fleet to crush the humans, and instead they had been the ones crushed. The remaining Tyrell ships fled, limping away in shame. The Atlas, scarred but still unstoppable, continued on its steady path as if nothing had happened. Admiral Veyron, watching from his own vessel, spoke quietly. "They called it primitive. They were wrong. This is not primitive, this is human." The words echoed in the minds of every listener. In the days that followed, the galaxy argued endlessly. Some demanded retaliation, insisting that humanity must be destroyed before it grew stronger. Others urged caution, reminding everyone of the fleet that had just been shattered. And some, those who understood, remained silent, choosing to watch and wait. But no matter what they said, no matter how they argued, one fact could not be denied. Humanity had revealed itself. The Atlas was no relic, no joke. It was proof. Proof that humans were not only survivors but warriors who built for endurance, not appearance. Proof that they could not be underestimated, and proof that the galaxy had just witnessed the beginning of something far greater. The so-called primitive supercarrier had stood against an entire fleet and won, and in that victory, the galaxy saw the truth. Humans were dangerous. The aftermath of the Tyrell engagement left the galaxy buzzing. Messages of awe and disbelief traveled faster than light. Observers who had once laughed at the so-called primitive supercarrier now spoke in whispers, debating in hushed tones whether humanity should be feared, admired, or both. Despite the destruction the Atlas had caused, the humans remained calm. The ship's interior hummed with life as crews repaired minor damage, tested systems, and returned everything to order. Commander Hale walked through the corridors, observing quietly. Nothing was hurried. "Everything was precise. It is astonishing," said a core engineer watching a repair crew swap out a damaged engine module. "They lost nearly a quarter of the ship's external plating, and yet the internal systems are barely affected." "I have never seen anything like it," Hale nodded. "Redundancy is key. The ship was built to survive, not to impress. Every section, every system is backed up. We never rely on one point of failure. You will see more if you continue to observe." The engineer shook his head, disbelief written on his face. "It's clever." Brutally clever. Across the galaxy, curiosity grew. Empires began to question their own understanding of humans. How could a species so young in spaceflight construct a vessel capable of standing against a proud fleet and emerging nearly unscathed? It was then that intelligence officers from multiple civilizations began to dig into historical records. Humanity's rise was slow, almost unnoticed in the records of older, sprawling civilizations. Their first probes were basic. Their ships were simple, their colonies small, yet hints emerged. Humans had long prepared for conflict, quietly building infrastructure, experimenting with weapons and engineering systems that relied on endurance and adaptability, rather than elegance. The Atlas, the officers discovered, was not an isolated project. It was part of a series of human warships, designed over decades for survival in environments where other species would fail. Humans were methodical. They prepared not for glory but for the possibility of catastrophe. This realization shocked many. Unlike most galactic civilizations, humans did not trust technology alone. They trusted skill, discipline, and clever design. They engineered their ships to endure what no alien fleet had ever imagined. On the Atlas, Commander Hale convened a meeting with his senior officers. The human crew had long expected alien curiosity to grow. They had trained for these moments, understanding that their purpose in the galaxy required more than mere firepower. "We have shown them strength," Hale said, voice calm and measured. "Now we must show them reason. Humanity did not build these ships to dominate. We built them to survive, to endure, to protect ourselves and those who cannot protect themselves." The officers nodded. They had been chosen not only for skill but for judgment. They knew that alien misunderstanding could spark conflicts humans did not desire. Our systems are not perfect, but they are flexible, Hale continued. If a situation becomes impossible, we adapt. That is why the Atlas can survive attacks that would destroy other vessels. And that is why our species has survived when others might have failed. Meanwhile, the aliens scrambled to comprehend the new reality. Fleet admirals debated strategy late into the night. Scientists ran simulations. Philosophers questioned the nature of humans. How could a young species, considered primitive in so many ways, produce machines and strategies that made older civilizations doubt themselves? The Zorath Union began to suspect something more profound. They realized that humans did not merely rely on technology. They relied on thought, improvisation, and the stubborn will to endure. Ships could be studied, weapons tested, but human resilience was harder to measure. It could not be destroyed with a single strike. One Varn scholar concluded, "The humans' design philosophy is alien to us. They do not seek efficiency in the way we do. They seek redundancy, endurance, and adaptability. In a way, they fight for survival, not victory alone." Reports of the Atlas's construction began to leak into public channels. Observers pieced together clues from centuries of human development. They discovered massive orbital shipyards hidden deep in human-controlled space. They learned of test vessels smaller than the Atlas, which had already endured simulated battles beyond the capacity of most alien fleets. One startling revelation emerged. Humans had studied every conceivable form of warfare. They had not only prepared for alien attack, but also for natural disasters, internal malfunctions, and cosmic anomalies. Every ship they built was a layered safety net. Every vessel carried the philosophy of survival. This revelation spread through the council chambers like wildfire. Members argued endlessly. Some feared humans' growing capabilities. Others were awed, even inspired. Few could deny that a new era of galactic balance had begun. On board the Atlas, life continued. Crews maintained their stations, checked weaponry, and monitored sensors. Unlike alien fleets, which often celebrated victories or mourned losses, the human crew acted as if every battle was routine. There was no gloating, no dramatics. Discipline reigned supreme. A young officer newly assigned to the bridge asked Hale quietly, "Sir, don't you worry about what they think of us?" Hale looked at him calmly. "We do not control what they think. We control what we do. Humans survive not by seeking approval, but by preparing for reality. They will understand soon enough." The officer nodded, though he still felt the tension of alien scrutiny. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council convened again. The delegates debated the nature of humanity in heated sessions. "The humans are unpredictable," said one Tyrell admiral. "They build ships that should be weak, yet they withstand fleets. They fight with tactics we cannot anticipate. This is dangerous." A Varn delegate responded, "Dangerous, yes, but also intelligent. They plan for contingencies, they survive where others fail. Perhaps we should study them more closely, not just fear them." Admiral Varen, as always, remained quiet for much of the debate. When he finally spoke, his words carried weight. "The galaxy misunderstands humans. It calls them primitive because it measures them by elegance, not endurance. But humans are not primitive. They are clever. They adapt, and they endure. That is why we must not underestimate them." His voice caused a ripple of uneasy acknowledgement. Back on the Atlas, a communication arrived. It was a request for a demonstration of capability, sent by an uneasy coalition of alien scientists and strategists. The humans considered it carefully. The answer was simple, yes. They would show the galaxy how their designs worked, but not to threaten, only to demonstrate resilience and adaptability. The demonstration began quietly. The Atlas maneuvered through asteroid fields, simulated attacks and complex formations that alien fleets would struggle to match. Every system responded perfectly. Engines that were struck in simulation switched to backups. Weapon systems adapted, firing automatically in complex sequences. Hull damage was absorbed, rerouted, repaired, and compensated for almost in real time. Observers could not believe what they were seeing. What had seemed primitive was now a marvel of practical design. Every strike, every maneuver, and every repair revealed a species that thought in layers, that planned for failure, and that built machines capable of surviving the unimaginable. By the end of the demonstration, one thing was clear: the galaxy had underestimated humans. They had assumed the Atlas was a relic, a joke, a symbol of a young species. Instead, it was a proof. Proof that humans could think differently, that they could endure, that they could survive when all others might fail. The council began to change. Discussions shifted from mockery to strategy, from humor to caution, from doubt to respect. Even the Tyrell, still smarting from their recent engagement, could not deny it. Their ships had failed and the humans had survived without effort. The galaxy had glimpsed the hidden truth. Humanity was a species that could not be measured by the same rules as others. In the quiet corridors of the Atlas, Commander Hale walked alone, staring out into the void. He knew the galaxy was beginning to understand. Humanity had revealed itself not for conquest but for survival. And survival, he thought, often demanded more than technology alone. It demanded courage, cleverness, and the ability to endure. The hidden truth, long prepared but never shown, was finally out. Humans were not just builders of ships. They were builders of resilience, masters of preparation, and in a galaxy that measured power by speed, elegance, and flash, humans had quietly created something stronger, the ability to survive the impossible. And that ability, as the galaxy would soon learn, could change everything. News of the Atlas's engagement with the Tyrell fleet and the subsequent revelations about human resilience spread to every corner. Former scoffers no longer laughed. Instead, diplomats, admirals, and scientists alike spoke in hushed tones of the humans' capabilities and the hidden philosophy behind their ships. Everywhere, aliens wondered the same thing. What did humanity want? Were they conquerors coming to claim the stars? Or were they simply a species prepared for survival, too strong to ignore? The Galactic Observation Council decided that the only way to answer this question was to invite the humans to speak directly. A neutral meeting was arranged in orbit above a desolate planet, chosen for its lack of strategic value. Ships from dozens of species formed a careful perimeter. They came armed with curiosity, caution, and a little fear. A single shuttle descended from the Atlas. Its passengers were humans, calm and disciplined as always. Commander Hale led them, stepping out with quiet authority. Behind him were officers, technicians, and a few young crew members who had witnessed the Atlas's first battle. Every face was serene, but their presence carried weight. The delegates greeted them formally, but the tension was palpable. The air seemed charged with anticipation. Every species waited for the humans to declare their intentions. Some suspected hostility. Others suspected diplomacy. The humans said nothing at first. Hale simply observed the assembly, noting reactions, expressions, and posture. Finally, he spoke. His voice, amplified and translated for all to hear, was calm yet carried undeniable authority. Members of the Galactic Council, representatives of every major civilization, he began. You have witnessed the Atlas, you have seen its endurance. You have seen what humans can build, and perhaps what humans can endure. Now you ask why. Why did we build it? Why do we exist in a galaxy full of older, more advanced species? He paused, letting the question settle. The council held its collective breath. We built these ships not to dominate, not to conquer, and not to instill fear. We built them to survive. Humanity has learned through centuries that survival is never guaranteed. We have faced adversity, internal and external, and we have learned that endurance is more important than elegance. Strength is not just a tool, it is a responsibility. A Zorath delegate, still skeptical, raised a question. Commander Hale, if survival is your goal, why reveal yourself now? Why not hide as many weak species have done? Hale's expression was steady. Hiding is temporary. Eventually the universe finds you, or you find the universe. Humanity chose to prepare, not to hide. But now we cannot remain unseen. Our survival depends on recognition, on understanding, and on the willingness of others to respect our presence. The delegates shifted uneasily. They were not used to hearing such frankness. They were accustomed to political games, veiled threats, and grandiose speeches. Humans spoke differently, directly, honestly, and without unnecessary embellishment. Then Hale continued, and his words struck even harder. The galaxy has called us primitive. It has underestimated us. Yet here we stand, not out of arrogance, but because we endure. You measure power by sleekness, by speed, by elegance. We measure it by resilience, adaptability, and the ability to continue when all else fails. That is why the Atlas exists. That is why humanity survives. That is why we will continue to thrive. For a moment, the assembly was silent. The words carried no threat, yet they were undeniable. Every species present understood the message. Humanity was not to be dismissed. Humanity was not to be underestimated, and most importantly, humanity was here. The aliens began to ask questions, tentative at first, then increasingly bold. "Commander," a Varn diplomat asked, "how many vessels like the Atlas exist?" Hale's eyes did not waver. "More than you might expect, but fewer than you fear. We do not build to provoke. We build to endure. If war comes, we will be ready. If peace comes, we will still be ready. Preparation does not require hostility." Another delegate from the Tyrell, still recovering from their recent defeat, asked, "And what do you want from us?" "From the galaxy?" Hale's answer was simple. "We seek coexistence, understanding, respect. The galaxy is large and humanity is small but capable. We do not wish to conquer. We wish only to survive, to thrive alongside others, and to ensure that when storms come, we endure." The words resonated with the audience. They were not threats. They were a declaration of purpose. Over the following hours, discussions continued. The humans answered questions about technology, about philosophy, about their history. Everywhere there was calm confidence tempered with humility. They did not boast unnecessarily, but they did not underplay their capabilities either. Admiral Varen watched closely. He had seen many civilizations rise, fall, and threaten each other. But he had never seen a species present itself with such clarity and honesty. "They are not seeking power," he muttered to his aide. "They are seeking survival. But in doing so, they command respect." The realization spread among other delegates. The humans' message was clear. They were capable of destruction, yes, but they did not seek war. What they sought was recognition of their presence, and acknowledgement that underestimating them would be dangerous. It was a new kind of diplomacy, one built not on deception or manipulation, but on truth and undeniable capability. After the meeting, the humans returned to the Atlas. The galaxy's representatives left with a mix of awe, caution, and something else, curiosity. They had glimpsed not just the Atlas, but the philosophy that built it. They had seen a species that prepared for impossibility, that thrived where others might fail, that built ships not for appearance, but for endurance. Across the stars, messages began to circulate. Humanity had arrived not as a conqueror, but as a presence impossible to ignore. Scientists debated human engineering methods. Philosophers debated their philosophy of resilience. Generals debated their potential for warfare. And everyone in some quiet corner began to respect them. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Humans were not primitive. They were different. They were clever. They were persistent. They were resilient. And most importantly, they were here. Commander Hale stood on the bridge of the Atlas looking out at the stars. His crew moved efficiently around him, tending to systems, monitoring sensors, and maintaining readiness. Everything was as it should be. One young officer watching the stars asked quietly, "Sir, do you think the galaxy understands us now?" Hale looked at him and smiled faintly. "They are beginning to understand. But understanding takes time. Some will fear us, some will respect us, and some will try to challenge us. That is their choice. We can only do what humans have always done: endure, adapt, and prepare." The officer nodded, feeling a new sense of purpose. Humanity was no longer hidden, no longer underestimated. They had revealed themselves to the galaxy, and their presence would change everything. As the Atlas departed, moving steadily back toward human space, alien fleets watched in silence. The Supercarrier bore the scars of battle, yet it remained a monument to human ingenuity and determination. Everywhere, thoughts turned to one simple truth. The species they had once laughed at was no longer laughable. Humanity had announced itself not with conquest, but with clarity and resilience. And in doing so, they had sent a message far louder than words. Humans were not to be underestimated. Humans endured. Humans survived. Humans could not be ignored, and the galaxy would never be the same.